Welcome to the Journey Cast. I'm Levi, and this is my co-host,
Alicia.
And with us today, we have a very special guest.
How's it going?
Spencor Thomas.
Spencer, yeah.
Spencer, welcome.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to talk about, well, Spencer, tell us a little bit, how have you been? For people who don't know you, maybe, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Okay.
Who is Spencer?
I've been good. My name is Spencer. I just recently got married in last November, so that's been a pretty big change. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then I also, I teach at the Christian school. I teach grade 5 there full time, so I spend most of my time with youth and kids.
Nice. And then you volunteer at youth as well.
Yes.
So you work after work.
Wow. Youth group isn't much work, per se.
Be thankful.
Man, who does that? Teenagers are the
Volunteering.
worst.
Yeah.
Volunteering is good.
Yeah. So we want this, I think, maybe, Alicia, do you want to explain a little bit of the heart behind this to those that are
Yes. Okay.
tuning in for the first time? Haven't
Because
heard
this
about
is the first time, and you don't even know who we are, really.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Alicia. I've been a youth pastor here for, I think, about almost 8 years now. It's a long time.
Yeah.
I grew up here too, which is kind of fun. Just never left. Lifer.
Same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually knew Levi when he was young, which was like
Little kid.
yesterday.
Actually, I remember when you came into the youth group. I was in youth at that time.
Look at that. I want to sing the Circle of Life, but
She
that doesn't
wasn't-
apply.
Circle of life.
But why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So we heard from, oddly, a parent who was saying, hey, I've got a girl in my home and I would like to grow a little bit in her faith and have something to listen to because doesn't really enjoy sitting down and reading, that kind of stuff. And so we thought, hey, let's create something where we can talk about God and about really cool topics and get kids thinking a little bit more about their faith and growing in that in a way they can listen to it that's hopefully mildly entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were trying to look for a resource out there, something that they could listen to. And there's not much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we could really find anything that we could recommend. So then we thought, hey, maybe this is something that we're capable of doing. So
Maybe.
after
You'll decide.
We'll see.
Yeah.
After a little bit of trial and error, got this set up, and yeah, it's we're brand new to this, so be patient. But yeah, we want it to be like somewhat, we have some good conversation, catch up with people.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to have people on, like youth leaders and people from hopefully other churches too, and talk about some topics
that you can submit to us.
Yeah. Submit topics to us if you want to go to hillcrestchurch.net/journeycast. There's a form there where you can submit what you would like us to talk about. A lot of people have suggested things like discussing one of the kids in our youth, Josue.
Name drop.
That's not really the topics we're looking for. I mean, we can talk about Josue. I think we'll have Josue on at some point, but we're more looking for topics of things that maybe you don't understand that well. Maybe it's a Tuesday night where you've got questions after Alicia's message, and we can further explore that. And Spencer actually submitted this topic, hence why we're having him on. Just the power of prayer and how powerful it can be in our lives, and how necessary I think it is too. So Spencer, you actually, I think prayer became really important to you. You went and did an internship. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually, I had been a part of YWAM for a bit. So I did a DTS school. And prayer was, like, up until that point, prayer was kind of just like, pray for dinner, pray before bed, you know, like good Christian.
It was just habits.
Pray for them all. Yeah, habits, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and, like those prayers are still good and all, but you don't really see, like, the full power of God praying for that, because it's like, oh, great, you prayed for your food. Now it's, I hope I don't get a tummy ache. Like,
and are you actually praying because you're thankful, or are you praying because your parents taught you to pray?
Because is it an obligation, or is it something that you're actually like? Is it a foundational part of your faith? Right?
Yeah.
So I did YWAM for a little bit, and then I was on staff after that for about 6 months or so before going back to school and stuff. And I found that like where prayer really became apparent to me was when I was out in the Philippines. Out in the Philippines, we would have to go and essentially preach the gospel and do evangelize, like just that heavy hitting missionary work in a third world country. And some of those places that you see, it's like, it's hard to think that like I step outside and I see like a Circle K or a Husky that I can just go get a Gatorade at or something like that. Whereas there it's like some of those villages don't even have doors or windows or power. Right.
Yeah.
And so to see like the struggles that they go through, and for them, like the reaction they have to prayer versus the reaction we have to prayer in North America is so very different.
Yeah.
So when praying over there, we were praying for things and asking for things like healing and partnering with God. That's a big part of prayers.
Yeah. It's not you healing
them. It's not you healing them, right? Yeah. It's you partnering with God, and then it's God healing them. And even when you look at the way that Jesus prayed in the New Testament and stuff, and kind of if you analyze the walk that Jesus did, never did he say that it was his power that healed that person, or it was his prayer, because prayer is not about like, it's not about,
even though he could.
He like, even though he could,
he was probably the only person that could. Yeah.
Prayer is not about like taking credit.
Yeah.
I guess, like,
especially for us. Yeah.
Like it's, if you pray for someone and something good happens to them, you shouldn't be like, oh, I did that, I prayed for them. Because in reality, like,
and I think that's interesting, because like I think there's some times where like even myself, I could be like, oh, I need prayer for this thing. I should ask these people to pray for it because they're good. And I mean, like, there's people that are really good at committing to doing it daily and having a routine and being faithful in that. But it's not like their prayer is more powerful. Like, I mean, if you have more people praying for something, that's obviously great. But it's not like, oh, I'm going to get Spencer to pray for this because it will mean something different.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's a common misconception, is that people will get like, oh, I need to get my pastor to pray for this, or I need to get my friend's parent to pray for this. And not that there's
anything wrong with those things.
Well,
but it's like,
it's a good idea to get a pastor to pray, because you know that they're actually going to pray, because there's nothing that I dislike more. It's a common thing in the Christian circle, is the whole idea of, oh, I'll pray for you. But then like, the most prayer you do for that is saying, oh, I'll pray for you. And then you don't actually pray. Like, I'd hate to say it, but if you're not praying, but you're saying you're praying.
I'm for sure guilty of that sometimes. I feel like sometimes I'll just be like, okay, I know I'm going to forget. So I'm just going to like pray about it. Like something quick right now. Cause that's better than nothing.
Yes.
Like, if, you know, or sometimes I'll pray about it right away. And then like, I'll maybe like, maybe sometimes forget. And I maybe should really take notes. So when I'm praying, I can remember it. But like, and I'll be in the shower and I'm like, oh yeah, well, this person's going through that. I gotta pray for that. You know, like just, it doesn't, you know, like it's great to have set aside time for that. Absolutely. But don't feel like, oh, I'm driving to work now is not the time to pray.
Yeah, no, there's always a time to pray.
Absolutely.
The prayer,
Brother Lawrence. Did you have to read about Brother Lawrence?
I don't know if I did.
Okay.
Who's Brother Lawrence?
Who's Brother Lawrence?
Okay. I think it's called Practicing the Presence of God. It's like it's a tiny little book that he wrote. I had to read it in Bible college. But basically it's how all day, everything you do can be a prayer. Like you can be, like he talks often about how like he volunteered to cut up all of the vegetables or like wash the dishes, because those were moments where he would pray, right? It didn't have to be like a moment where he's just like sitting with his eyes closed somewhere, right? Like he's just talking to God all day long. It was a continuous conversation. I really liked that.
Yeah, no, it's in that. I think that's a common misconception, is even just talking with God. It doesn't have to start out as like, dear God, or dear Father God, or dear Jesus. Like, it doesn't have to start out with like something so formal. Like, obviously those formal prayers are good because it keeps a structure still, but prayer in the Bible still it's a conversation.
Yeah. I think I remember someone too saying, not sure if it was this person, so I'm not going to say their name, but I don't remember exactly who, but like someone was saying that like those things are also important, and like do them because you're trying to give like honor and respect to God, because of awesome and like actually awesome and like glory and like just how great he is, that he deserves that honor and that respect. But we're a lot of us are raised in, you know, like we just say that because we say that. Like,
well, it falls into like that. It's a very careful line between like, where is your relationship with God versus where is like religion,
right?
In a sense, because
I do this 5 times a day because I have to.
Versus like, is this something that am I actually honoring him, or am I just afraid of angering him almost, in a sense? And that's, I think for a lot of people, that's what prayer has become, is it's kind of just like this idea of I'm praying, but it's kind of just like a one-way conversation. But in reality, prayer is not one way, it's 2 ways. And a lot of times with prayer, you have to really contend for what you're wanting.
Yeah.
And or what you're desiring, right?
Yeah.
Or all our prayers are guilt prayers. It's like, oh, it's been a while since I prayed.
Yeah.
I'm just going to spend my first 5 minutes apologizing about how I'm the worst.
Well, I know for a while there, speaking of like guilt prayers and stuff, I felt like every time that I was praying for quite some time, I was like praying the majority of my prayers were, I surrender it all. But I feel like there starts to be almost like an issue that comes up if all you're doing is praying that you're going to surrender it all. Like, at some point you actually have to surrender it all and lay it down for him. Right? Like you're
trying to put all the...
It's like you're doing one prayer to encompass the last like 5 months of stuff that you've gone through, rather than just like praying.
Well, think
daily.
about like a friendship, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Think of your best friend. Like if they just don't talk to you for months at a time and then reach out only when they need something.
Yeah, it's
what kind of relationship is that?
Oh, you start to get annoyed with it,
your
right?
best friend is your wife, so
Very true. That'd be
your second best friend.
No, but like even on like that whole aspect of it is like most people know Snapchat nowadays. For those who don't, there's a whole like streak system where like you send a picture to someone or talk with them every day, and then it slowly builds up. And I'm seeing like some of these teenagers, and in some cases, like my wife has a friend, she's been on a Snapchat streak for like 2,600 days plus. But it's like, start a Snapchat streak with God. Like, start talking with God every day, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you remind yourself to pray throughout the day? How do you make a habit out of that?
I have specific times or moments that I like to dedicate to it. I think there's a movie that shows it well, The War Room. I don't know if you guys have seen The War Room at all.
Heard of it.
Yeah, it's honestly, watch it. It'll change your entire perspective on prayer.
Yeah.
Basically, the kind of idea of it is that, like in this case, in the movie, they have a specific room dedicated just to prayer.
Yeah. So like a war room, like generals and stuff. It's like a prayer.
Prayer war room, as in like a war against like good and evil, that sort of thing. Yeah. But this room could be a closet in your house, and in this movie, it's depicted as there's a single chair, and then there's a closet, nothing on the walls, nothing in there to distract you, just the chair.
Right.
And all that you can put on the walls is your prayer requests, different things related to prayer and stuff. And just
like maybe leave your phone out of the room.
Don't even take your phone into the room, and don't have a beanbag chair.
Or a Zorby.
Don't do a Zorby. Like anything that can make you like lounge or be comfortable. Because in reality, like when you pray, you're supposed to be focusing on that prayer and contending. If you're praying and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, ooh, this is nice.
This is a good point.
That starts to be an issue there, because you start focusing less on the prayer and more about, oh, this is relaxing, and then nodding off maybe, or
pick a good time.
I think we need to have realistic expectations too.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if like, hey, I haven't prayed in like this is not me saying this.
Yeah.
But like if I haven't prayed in a really long time, right? I'm like, if the first go back at it, I'm like, I'm going to pray for 2 hours. I'm just going to sit and close my eyes and pray for 2 hours.
Good luck with that.
Well,
it's going to be difficult.
You're going to fall asleep. You're going to have a really great nap, you know, but we have to have realistic expectations.
For the first 5 minutes.
No, I have like personal experience on that 100% at YWAM, the YWAM place that I was at here in town.
Yeah.
They would have it mandatory that you go to their prayer room for at least 2 hours. And the first couple weeks of doing that, I'll be honest, I fell asleep a couple times in there. Like I fell asleep.
I'm sure a lot of their students do.
Or it's like you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I feel like I've been praying a lot. How much time has passed? And you look down and it's been like 10 minutes and you're like, I still got an hour and 50 minutes to go. No way.
It's also a relaxing experience if you think about it, right? We're giving our burdens away to God. We're like spending time in his presence. Yeah. Like these are things that are soothing.
Yeah, 100%. I just think that like there's an aspect of like there's different types of prayer, obviously, and different intentions for that prayer. And I think one of the things that we tend to struggle with is we're really good at praying for what we want and praying for our desires and praying for things that are easy, that come natural to us.
It's important to be, I think, thankful too, like just to take time to be like, hey, thank you for
100%.
And I think that the things I often am thankful for, like when I pray, is like, hey, thank you for my family. Thank you for my job. Like, and then like, thank you for like the fact that I have a vehicle. Like, thank you for a place, like a roof over my head. Thank you that I don't have to worry about where my next meal comes from. Because like I know there's people
that's what their prayer is. They have to worry.
Hey, spending time with my family is difficult. Like they have to pray for those things. Like, hey, can you make it like not so difficult this time? Hey, like, so to be thankful for those things, like, hey, like not everyone has those things. Like just take a moment, say thanks and understand that. Understand the weight of that.
Literally like take a breath, say thanks. It helps humble you almost by like being so thankful that way. I think like the type of prayer that I think that a lot of people should get more into with that is actually being thankful at like even the start of their prayers or something. Like thank him for what you have, because
thank you that
just like what you have now, it can easily be taken away. Not saying that he's going to take it away, but like it can easily feel like
we live in a fallen world
when
so
it's gone. 100%. Exactly. There's that whole aspect of there is good and evil in the world. Like as much as the world is like God's creation, there's still sin that has entered into it. And because of that, we need to have practice praying prayers where we're contending and fighting against evil with them. Yeah. And it's something that not a lot of people do. Like how often do you guys notice someone and have like this feeling or this inkling of an idea of that, oh, I should pray for them for something. And then like, is it just like a, dear God, please let them be okay. Amen. Or is it like, are you actually using intentional language and being serious about it? Yeah. Like,
well, like, and being like, like, hey, like, I don't know what's going on in this person's life. Obviously there's something going on and like, whatever it is, maybe it's this, maybe it's family, maybe it's work, maybe it's financial issues. Like, like get intentional about that. It's like you still don't know, but like,
doesn't hurt to give Satan a good old slap in the face with it. Like, even if you don't know, like,
when specific prayers are good, be specific in your prayers. You're talking about thankfulness and like thankful for the things in our lives too. I'm thinking a little bit about how Jesus chose to start his prayer, like the Lord's Prayer. So he started out with acknowledging his gratefulness for who God is, right? I think that's something we can start with too. Like, how lucky are we that we have a good God
that never changes,
who's consistently good and cares about us. And I think sometimes can take that for granted too, right? Like, God, thank you for who you are.
Yeah. What's that one verse? I want to pull it up here. The like the bothering God, like knocking at the door. Like
it's like, isn't it like seek and you will find?
No, like
or is it
I
the other one?
stand at the door and knock?
No. It's a different door. It's a different door.
Oh, it's a sliding door, right?
No, it's like it's
revolving
French doors.
It's the one where it's like a neighbor. Like if you get up in the night and knock at your neighbor's door, they'll eventually get up and answer because you're like persistent. Do you guys not know the one the verse?
I'm not too familiar with that one.
I feel like it was just in staff meeting recently.
I wasn't at staff meeting.
Sorry, Steve.
What?
But like, the idea of like, just like be annoying. Ask for things constantly. Like God can handle that.
Yes.
And not that he's going to get annoyed, but like, like just keep asking for it. Like, do you actually,
do you actually
how bad
like,
do you want this thing?
Well, exactly.
That's a Bible verse, the persistent widow.
Yeah.
Is that?
Is that what you're thinking about?
Maybe.
The persistent widow is the one who just asks the king for something over and over and over and over again. And he's so tired of hearing it from her that he grants her request because he's like eager to be rid of her. Right?
Yeah, maybe something similar to that.
I'm not saying God's eager to be rid of you, but
no, like get that.
But that's just like, there's something about.
Put this in perspective. Like, how many prayers does God answer a day? Like, he's got the entire world of prayers, right?
And wants to answer yours too.
What's
Bruce
one more?
Almighty,
Yes, all the
reply
emails.
all,
Yeah.
answer.
Yes.
Oh, that's
And the world goes to chaos.
yeah. But it's like, what's one more?
Yeah.
Like, he's already answering a bunch. What's one more prayer?
And what do we do when he doesn't answer in the way we expect, right?
Yes, that's.
I think that's another thing is we have a preconceived idea and assumption of how he's going to answer, and he knows that idea, but like he's got a better plan because he's God.
He's not a genie.
Well, I think even
he's not
like,
a microwave.
That
God,
takes
he's not a microwave.
that takes a look directly into the first part of the Lord's Prayer, where it's "Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done." Like when you're praying, you're praying not for your will to be done again, because you're partnering with God and you're wanting His will to be done.
Yeah.
Jesus never prayed because it's like, "Dude, Jesus, please, I want to snowboard so bad because I just want to have fun." It's like, does it fit into what God's plan is for you?
And two, I think it's
Right?
also important, like, side note there is like, I remember my mom telling me one time that like God cares about what you care about.
Yeah. Well, that's
like-
that's in Ephesians, right? It's like the Lord knows the desires of your heart.
Exactly. So like, don't be afraid to pray first, like, but don't just ask for a snowboard. But he cares about that too.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, I know that you enjoy this and that this is like, you have a lot of fun with it. And like, you're, like maybe, like he cares about those things. Like, but like, if you're only asking for that, he's gonna be like, hey, maybe trust me for other things first and we'll get to the snowboard.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's like when it comes to prayer, I find that the easiest way is to just like, you almost just have to get started, even if it's like 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think
like
I think creating a habit for it
Yeah.
is gonna help.
I have a practical thought about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it today. You know those like annoying billboards you're like driving down the street and it's like made you look?
I have one by my house right now that says
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
like-
they work,
it
right?
says,
They're like, you should advertise here
"Seeing
because obviously
this?"
it works.
Yeah, it's like seeing this. So are your clients.
Yes.
Like,
So I've kind of taken that into my own life, and
Yeah.
like I've shared about this at youth group before, but I like actually have found this very valuable. Is like I will leave like Post-it notes places, or like, because if I see it, I'm like, why is that here? And I'm like, oh, it's a reminder to pray.
All right.
So like sometimes I can put one on the dash of my car, or like if I like know I'm going to be doing dishes, I like put one by the sink or something, right? It's like these little reminders. Sometimes I like used to like write on myself with pen and like
Right.
leave a little dot or
Yeah.
a line or something, like, oh, why is that on my hand? I'm like, it's my reminder to pray.
Right.
Because like it's helpful. I'm
Yeah.
a visual person. I see those things and it works for me, right? So
Yeah.
like I don't know if it's your school locker or like wherever it is, like in your room, in your mirror, whatever. If there's a place where it's like, hey, I'd like to remember to pray,
Yeah.
like make yourself a little note. It works.
Yeah. Something just to like, and it doesn't have to be like, if it's hard for you to start with 2 hours a day,
I don't even do
don't
2
start
hours a
with
day.
2 hours
right
a
now.
day.
Like that's
Start with something attainable. Like start with like, 5 minutes a day, and don't make it like as I'm laying down in bed, I'm just going to give God 5 minutes.
Okay,
And
but there is
then
something
fall
to that. I love to pray when I fall asleep because I pray and I fall asleep way faster. It works for real. I'm like praying, I'm like, otherwise I'm cycling through things in my mind. I'm like, what are my worries from today?
Yeah.
What are my worries prematurely for tomorrow? I'm like praying and I'm then like,
Yeah.
so I do fall asleep mid-prayer. I do.
Yeah.
I think God doesn't
like,
mind that.
I think but like if you also like want to be super intentional about like that list.
Maybe don't start there.
Maybe don't start there. Maybe do that in addition to. But
Dear
like,
Jesus, please help cure this.
yeah.
Like
God knew your heart there. He's on it. He's on it.
That's not going to be a problem for me. I'm going to like at least awake for a half hour. But like, like just make it like 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes.
even if like
If that's great and like you're running out of time, make yourself 10 minutes. Like,
Okay, but as I'm doing this, does my prayer need to sound like my pastor's prayer?
no.
Do I need to start using really formal words to impress God?
No, so this is like my number one like pet peeve about like
stop.
this type of stuff is I call it Christianese, like just
Yes.
the idea of like
yeah.
you're using every buzzword in the book just because it sounds good. And it's like, just
Father God,
use
Lord
the
God.
words you know
Yes.
that are going to have the biggest impact, because it's more about the intention behind the prayer
shrub
than
of
what you're
protection.
saying, right? Like,
Hedge of protection.
Shrub. I want to use that now. A shrub of protection.
like,
And I think like, yeah, like there's still people that like I've heard pray that way, and like, you know, like it's
well, if it's in
good,
their
but
vocabulary, it's in their
if it's in your,
vocabulary,
but like
right?
don't do it to
Impress
try and
God.
God.
Like, God's
Like,
already impressed with you for just saying yes to Jesus.
Yeah,
He doesn't
yeah.
need more.
yeah.
Like,
Okay. What about posture? Has there ever been a benefit to you in prayer postures?
Like you're
Like kneeling or
No,
having your
like
hands
actual
open
posture,
or
yeah.
actual postures.
I get like I think it's situational for me.
yeah, I think definitely I'm a pacer. So you'll find me at like during the youth group worship, I'll be like pacing
you
and
do that.
praying, and I pick out people in the crowd and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of the time, like you don't need to necessarily kneel, because I don't know if we're talking about prayer as a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna kneel when talking to someone else? Like,
But I
can
think
be
like
some
I
value
can
in it.
understand it like at bedtime if it's something that gets you in that place.
Yeah.
Because people have the routines that get them in that mind state.
I don't think there's anything
more
wrong
what it's about.
with it necessarily. Like, again, coming back to the like showing honor and
Oh, yeah.
reverence and respect for God. Like, would you bow to a king?
Yeah, well,
You know,
100%.
like, but that's different. Like if
Yeah.
you're bowing, like, oh, I really want this snowboard, and I want God to answer my prayer, so I'm just going to kneel because I know that's going to help. Like, so no, that's,
It doesn't like
your heart's-
add more onto it.
your spiritual, your heart posture isn't in the right place. then.
That's what it is. Heart. That's a great
Yeah.
usage of it. Heart posture. That's what matters more.
Yeah.
Your physical posture. God doesn't look at the physical.
your heart
There's-
posture affects your physical
Yes,
posture.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It can be humbling though. I think like there's been moments where there's something that, you know, if you're ever like pleading with God for something to, you know, humble yourself in that way and to
Yeah.
kneel and to pray.
100%. Again, that's like that, like the heart posture shows up in your physical then, but not the other way around. Like if you're kneeling just to kneel, it kind of,
Oh, right. Yeah.
it feels a little like pointless
Yeah.
in a sense. But if you were feeling called and like you get that like urge to do that, 100%, because it's going to take you to that place where you're in deep prayer, right?
Yeah, and even in worship too. Like I know
yeah.
a worship leader here one time said that like he's like, hey, like he remembers like he's like, I just remember like one time like not knowing how to worship, and like I wasn't sure what to do. Like they just kind of felt uncomfortable, and they're like, well, I see people putting their hands out, or some people like raising their hands. Like I'm just gonna try that, and it wasn't to be showy. It wasn't to be like, it's just like, hey, I'm going to try this because like, I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah.
And this seems to be some form of respect and worship. So I'm going to just do it because I want to worship my God. So yeah, I think there's going to be times too where it's like, you're like, I don't know how to pray. Or I don't know how to, like, I feel like I need to do something. Like, okay, go ahead and kneel. Like, but like, don't do it like, I am so great at praying. My prayer will be answered because I am kneeling and how great I am. Like it's,
Yeah, it doesn't give bonus points. We'll put it
you're
that way.
missing the point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing is I think what matters more is that you're getting the point and understanding what you're saying and doing versus just saying and doing it because it sounds like, wow, that makes me a really
There's
good
just
Christian.
no point in putting on a show for God.
Yeah.
There's just no
He's
point.
not gonna be like, oh,
he knows your
you
heart.
kneeled.
He made you.
well.
He raised his hands over there.
Yeah. He
knows
Extra
your
blessings for
thoughts.
him.
Answer that
Like,
prayer.
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know why we
Gabriel,
bother
get
trying
over
to
here.
fool him.
Give me a hand with this one,
Yeah,
would you?
it doesn't. I don't
Gonna
know.
bring
if
in a
it-
little extra help for you.
yeah.
God was really impressed
Yeah.
with that performance today.
We just want to let you know.
We'll put it this
Just
way:
be
From the
real.
big guy
if
himself.
you are shooting for an Oscar with your prayer, you're focusing on
Yeah.
the wrong part
Yeah.
of prayer.
Like think
Right,
about like
like-
like someone that like, are you gonna give like a hug to someone that you're like mad at, or like you're not a good friend with, like, or something like you're like, oh, I'm just gonna do this because I have to. It's like, no, you do that for someone you care about and you love, and you're like this showing the sign of like, hey, like I really care about you. You know?
Yeah, it's about terms of endearment almost. in a
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
Like, just
And yeah, I think the
really-
heart posture is important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely say so. with
Is God afraid if I'm mad at him or pray difficult prayers?
It really hurts his feelings, I think.
No. I think one of the best prayers you can ever pray is, God, give me the opportunity to be patient.
Yeah.
Like, because there are prayers that are going to be out there. Then the reason they call them dangerous prayers is because they're going to challenge you. But when has God not wanted to challenge you to help you grow?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Does he just want you to sit comfortably, or and
lie to
content, or
him,
does
like,
he
they're
want
so
you to
happy.
be a little discontent so that you can hunger for more and grow more?
And like
Right.
the fact that he doesn't give us anything that we can't handle.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And like
He does, but we
Well-
can handle it with him.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot we can't handle without God.
In teaching, we call that the zone of proximal development, actually. So that's my buzzword for the podcast here, zone of proximal
But like
development.
he makes it, so that it's
So
something that you can grow in.
Yeah, essentially, like when it comes to like kids and stuff, as a teacher, what you do is they have a certain like level that they can get to.
Right.
But then when you are added into the mix to help guide them, they can get a little bit more.
Right.
Right. And then once they get to that little bit more, then they can now just handle that. And then you can kind of help scaffold them up more and more. And I feel like God definitely does that as well.
He's the
like
perfect
that.
teacher. Yeah.
And you know what? Like in the past month, that's been my life.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, my wife got into a car crash and our car got totaled and everything like that. And
That's been a patience builder for sure.
that was a patience builder. And then just on top of it, like I've always been stressed with finances, I would say, and just kind of, we pray every night about our finances and stuff like that. When stuff like that happens, I'm like, there's no
much.
way I can handle this. And then out of nowhere, there's like a couple extra $1,000 that pop up and I'm like, we'll make it, I guess. Thanks, God.
Yeah.
This reminds me of one of my favorite prayers. I don't know why I'm saying this out loud. Do you remember that meme? It's like pretty old. There's a lady, there was like an apartment fire and she comes out, she's being interviewed and she's like, oh Lord Jesus, there's fire. And I often think of that when I'm like overwhelmed in my life or there's too much or it's just like one more thing and I don't even know what to pray. I'm just like, I'll pray that legitimately. I'm like, oh Lord Jesus, there's fire. I say it.
But I think that's the power of prayer though, is that like these things are going to come along and they're not always from God.
Yeah.
Like, let's face it, with the devil being in the world and like the whole idea behind, we live in a fallen world, right?
He can take it, and he can make it something.
And he
good
molds
come
it,
from
right?
Yeah,
Even then it's like, there's going to be times where there's stuff you can't handle, but it's not necessarily from him as a challenge, but it's just from the world.
He's like, hey, this horrible thing's happening, but I know how to use that to help Spencer grow or to help Alicia or Levi grow.
Or I'll walk through it with you, right?
Yeah.
Like think about, there was that whole idea about like, you walk through the sand on a beach and beside you, there's a set of footsteps. That set of footsteps
There
is
was only
Jesus.
one.
Yeah. Like it's,
And then you realized he's carrying you.
exactly, right? And it's the idea of like he's going to walk through you with these challenges.
Yeah.
But in order for that to like kind of get kickstarted here, like you got to trust in him and you got to pray.
Yeah.
Like that's the power of prayer is
relationship.
the true power of prayer is the idea that you are now inviting God into your life. Because think about it. God doesn't just force himself into your life. You have to willingly invite him. That's how it's always been. That's how it always will be. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for you to ask him. Like, sure, there are going to be times where he does stuff for you and that sort of thing. And those are your thankful prayers. But he's looking for you.
He wants you to trust him.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And so like, I think, like he loves to use those opportunities like, hey, like, like we need to rely on him, right? Like we need to. And he's like, oh, this is going to be a great opportunity. Like, let's see if this person like reaches out to me. And then when you do, it's like, great. Like you're trusting him. And then that gives him the opportunity to, hey, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to protect you. And then you've built this trust. Because relationships, like the best part of them is like that trust building, right? Like you don't have to worry. You don't have to question about that. And so if you can, take those opportunities to build that trust, you're going to have like an awesome relationship with God.
Sometimes you don't have because you don't ask.
Yes, absolutely.
That's literally what it is. And that's the power of prayer is the ability to ask and then, or the ability to stand in place for someone else who might not necessarily want to ask. Right. But then you can still get that kickstarted for them, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, while I was in the Philippines, like I said, we saw miracles. Like I watched a kid who was deaf from the time he was 5 until 16. And the only reason he wasn't deaf anymore is because like praying to God and asking God to come in and like heal him, because he doesn't know that he can do it himself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because you can pray for stuff yourself, but sometimes you don't feel like you can.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big struggle we have in North America, especially, is we are a very much an individualistic society.
Right.
Buzzwords again, I know.
Yeah.
But like,
I take care of myself.
I take care of myself. Like, I don't need
I'm the
anybody
first
else.
priority.
I have to. But
it's a very selfish
Or
society.
the doctor will fix it.
But even like on top of that, when you're saying that, you're also closing that door on God. Because if you're saying, I'll take care of it myself, you're no longer being like, well, God will help
And
me
you might
take
not
care
be
of
able
it.
to take care of it.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Or even if you are able to.
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
in our society, we've been
The
so
little dog in the fire. This is fine.
Yeah. We've been so conditioned to just kind of sit with that little dog in the fire going,
Yeah.
this is fine. And
Yeah.
just being like, I can handle
fine,
this. Like,
yeah.
I'm good. But at what point do we decide, like, okay, I need to put down myself and be like, okay, I
Usually our
clearly can't
breaking
handle
point.
it. Right?
Usually things are
when we
so
hit ground
bad,
zero,
we're like,
but
oh,
Yeah.
right,
but-
there's God.
with the power of prayer, it doesn't have to hit ground zero.
Yeah, you don't have to get to that point.
You don't have to get to that point. I think that's what makes, like, if you ever take
And
a
I
look
think
at
it's
someone.
too because people have had relationships where people have broken their trust.
Yep.
So you get this mentality of like, I just need to take care of myself because clearly I can't rely on anyone good.
Yeah.
This is why it's important to surround yourself with good friends. Take note. But like, yeah, if you only surround yourself with people that are constantly letting you down, you're going to get in the mindset that like, okay, I know I'm the only one that I can rely on.
Yeah, like,
And so then you don't even rely on God.
It extends to exactly, and that's where the issue lies, because
Yeah.
prayer only has power if you pray it.
Yeah.
We can say prayer is super powerful all the time, and it can be the greatest weapon in the world, or in this like the greatest blessing in the world, or the greatest thing of thanks
is
in
a
the world.
weapon.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's a very multi-use tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's we don't use it for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, at all.
Oh, I can talk to the creator of the universe. I don't feel like it.
Yeah. I'm mad at him right now. I don't want to talk to him.
I mean, this guy.
It's too easy.
This guy who single-handedly
But he's-
decimated the world
Yeah.
loves me.
Yeah.
I'm in a pretty good spot right now. Maybe
Yeah.
I should be praying.
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe I should be talking to him. Keep him in the loop. Yeah. Well, I think prayer is really important. If we can encourage you to get into a habit of making time for it daily, even if you're listening to this right now or watching this, maybe just pause this and
Take 5 minutes.
Take 5 minutes right now. Be thankful for the things that you have. Ask for the things that you don't, and thank Him for being consistent, because He is.
yeah.
He's the same.
Yeah.
every
And
day.
even if 5 minutes is like, feels like
Yeah.
too long,
Yeah.
pick
Yeah.
by
2 minutes.
person,
Yeah.
even like
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm going to pray for 3 people today.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
and just get in the habit of like, we got to build up our stamina is the biggest thing with
and
it.
I think too, like if you start with something manageable and attainable, you're going to get to that point, and then you're going to realize one day, like, hey, I'm praying for 10 minutes now.
Yeah.
I need to make time for that.
And then it's like 2 hours.
And then you could get to 2 hours, like
Yeah.
if that's where you want to be, right? Like and I think that's a great place to be.
Yeah. And things will happen. If you pray, things will happen.
But
And
they won't if you don't.
They
And be
don't
consistent,
happen in your timeline, obviously, but they will eventually.
and God will answer.
Something will change.
in His way,
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think we've been praying or like talking about this in staff meeting, and Steve's been preaching it a bit too, that the whole God's kingdom would come, right?
Yeah.
Like, just if you don't know what to ask for, like, hey, God, would your kingdom come in my life?
Oh, yeah.
Would it come in my friends' lives? Would your kingdom come to my school on earth as it is in heaven, God? You know, like, just if you don't know what to pray, pray the Lord's Prayer. You know,
You can never go wrong with that.
somewhere to start. You know,
Exactly.
There you go. We created a podcast.
we did.
We talked about
I
prayer.
think you got somewhere to go. You got
Yeah, I do.
This is
you got to go
great.
pick up the
I
wife.
do. Yeah.
We're hoping to make this a weekly thing.
Yeah.
If you want to send us topics about things to pray about, if you have questions from this episode, head on over to hillcrestchurch.net/journeycast. You can submit questions there or further topics. Share this with your friends if they've got questions about prayer. Yeah, I know we're new to this whole format, so if it's a little bit choppy or
Can
slow
only go
at
up from here.
we can only get better. I certainly hope so.
We'll pray it gets better.
Yeah.
Thank you,
pray about
Spencer,
that.
for being here
Yes,
with
thanks
us
so
on our
much.
very
Of course.
first
Appreciate
podcast.
it. We'll have him on
course.
again for sure.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
See you.